care, and this makes us all less safe from the rapists and murderers out there. Now, recently, my Orange County Sheriff, Don Barnes, a staunch conservative, issued a statement outlining his position on immigration enforcement. And here's what he stated. The Orange County Sheriff's Department does not enforce federal immigration law. It is not part of our primary mission, and we remain focused on violations of state and local laws. The department will provide for your safety and respond to your calls for service regardless of your immigration status. We do not and never will ask the immigration status of victims, witnesses, suspects, or those who call to report crimes. We enforce state and local laws equally without bias and without concern for your citizenship. Now, I actually think this is a pretty good summary of what each of you are describing happens in your cities, a situation where the federal government enforces immigration law while states and local authorities enforce state and local laws, and it makes a lot of sense. I don't know what my colleagues on the other side think, but I don't want my police focused on immigration status and asking people about that. I want them focused on preventing violent crimes. But with that, I want to shift gears to address Mayor Eric Adams. Mayor, as has been well discussed in this committee, you are the first sitting mayor in modern New York City history to be indicted while in office. Last year, of course, you were charged with numerous felony counts for soliciting and accepting bribes for nearly a decade from foreign nationals, businessmen, and others, including illegal campaign contributions and luxury travel. On February 10th of this year, the Trump Justice Department instructed federal prosecutors to drop charges against you. This decision caused 7 federal prosecutors, including a Trump appointee, to resign because they believed this was such an enormous miscarriage of the rule of law in law enforcement. Now, as some of my colleagues have pointed out, this was widely reported as a quid pro quo. I know you've denied that. I know you're probably limited in what you can say. But a lot of people out there, including a lot of people in New York City that I know, believe that these charges were dropped in exchange for a quid pro quo for your agreement to help the Trump administration enforce its immigration policies. So my question for you, Mayor Adams, is actually a very simple one. It's clear that whatever your intentions, whatever actions you take, whether on immigration or anything else, you do not enjoy the trust and confidence of the people of New York City. So my question is, why haven't you not resigned yet? And do you plan to resign today or anytime soon?
I'm really surprised after you laid out your strong belief in the country
It's a yes/no question.
And what we stand for, that
Why
you are
haven't you
actually
resigned
to
yet,
take
Mayor
away the
Adams?
power
Why have you
of
not
the
resigned
people.
yet?
The
It's
people
not
of
a
the
question that
city
gets to your
elected
lawyers.
me to be
Why
the
have you
mayor,
not resigned yet?
and you
Please answer
should
the
not be a
question.
hypocrite and ask the people of the city power to be reserved for them.
Why have you not
I was
resigned yet? And do
elected by
you
the people of the
intend to
city,
resign anytime
and you
soon,
don't
Mayor?
live in the
Gentleman's
city.
time's expired. Gentleman's time's expired. Chair recognizes Mr. Jack from Georgia.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for convening this hearing, and I'd like to begin by offering some thoughts about our colleague from Texas, Congressman Sylvester Turner, who sadly just passed away, as some of you may know. Congressman Turner was a former 2-term mayor of Houston, and as our witnesses can no doubt attest, being the mayor of a big city is not easy. Congressman Turner was a member of our freshman class, and his office is right next to mine in the Longworth House Office Building, and as such, I had an opportunity to walk with him to and from votes, found him to be an incredible gentleman with respect and courtesy. My colleagues across the aisle, particularly the freshmen, knew Congressman Turner better than I, so I certainly yield to them on this topic, but I wanted to at least mention my own thoughts for the record. Now, to the topic of today's hearing, I prepared for today's hearing by chatting with some of the mayors from my district, from those who represent just a few hundred to those who represent a few thousand, and I found a common theme of frustration. They, along with me and many other constituents I proudly represent in Georgia's 3rd Congressional District, want to know why policies are in place that benefit citizens of other countries at the expense of citizens of our own country. So if I could, Mayor Johnson, I'd like to start with you from Denver. I know Chairman Comer in his opening line of questioning discussed an ordinance passed by the Denver City Council in 2017, and I recognize you had just left the state Senate by then. But this ordinance prohibits city and county employees from assisting the enforcement of federal laws or inquiring about a person's immigration status. So I just have to ask, do you see a benefit in learning whether or not someone charged with a crime is a citizen of another country?
Thank you, Congressman. I do just want to say Mayor Turner hosted me in Houston when I first became mayor, so that's a powerful statement for me. Thank you for acknowledging it. Thank you, sir. We don't ask someone's status when we first contact them because it's not relevant to whatever charges we may be pursuing. They may list their country of origin on a document that we ask for. It does not indicate their immigration status. They could have legal status but be from another country.
Thank you. Mayor Johnson of Chicago, do you see a benefit in asking someone charged with a crime whether or not they're a citizen of our country?
The benefit of community safety is trust between local residents and law enforcement. And that relationship is critical to driving violence down. Under my leadership, violence has gone down in the city of Chicago.
And Mayor Johnson, if I can ask, have you ever disciplined, fired, or arrested law enforcement officers or correction officers if they notified ICE or other federal immigration officers of an illegal criminal alien in lockup or courts in violation of your sanctuary city policies? Have you ever disciplined, fired, or arrested a law enforcement officer that worked with ICE?
That is not, I don't believe that's under the jurisdiction of the mayor. I don't arrest people or
Are there issued memos in which you direct Chicago officers from not assisting with enforcement in immigration law or helping ICE identify folks who may not be here illegally?
we do have documentation around making sure that the residents of the city of Chicago know their rights. That's important because it builds trust between law enforcement and community. By having that confidence and trust, people are more likely to come forward to report violent crime regardless of their immigration status.
Well, I have to submit to the record, Mr. Chairman, an article from News Nation Now, January 21st, 2025, in which it says Chicago police reminded they cannot cooperate with deportations. And if I may ask, Mayor, are there any
Without objection to
memos?
order.
Thank you. Are there any memos that direct Chicago police to not cooperate with President Trump's deportation plans?
Well, so local law enforcement, we're not federal agents. So local law enforcement in the city of Chicago, they do not dub as federal agents.
But that having been said, from your mayoral office, have you ever issued memos to the police department instructing them not to cooperate with President Trump?
We remind people of what the welcoming city ordinance entails.
Would you submit to the committee any written documentation to the Chicago Police Department as it relates to this?
For the welcoming city ordinance, we're happy to make sure that this body has that ordinance, and that policy has been around for 40 years.
Thank you very much. Mayor Wu, back to my line of questioning with Mayor Johnston and John Sten. Do you believe that if you are asking someone who's been charged with a crime, whether or not they're here in our country legally, is that a proper and beneficial thing to do?
The laws of Massachusetts and the Boston Trust Act help Boston police solve crimes. We do not ask for immigration status because it allows for people to trust that when they call 911, when they have information that might help bring justice to another family, that they feel comfortable sharing that.
Thank you. And Mayor Adams, in closing, obviously you know the police very well. Do you see a benefit in asking folks who've been charged with a crime whether or not they're a legal citizen?
Yes, I do.
With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Ms. Gillen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think one thing everybody seems to agree on here is that our immigration system is broken and desperately needs to be fixed. And I ask my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to work together with us to fix our broken immigration system, to fix our broken asylum system, which isn't fixed by firing the top immigration judges who can actually help us fix this problem. But my focus here today is the effect on my constituents on Long Island. Every day, my constituents are dealing with the effects of the failure to secure our border and the influx of more than 670,000 migrants who have come into the state and New York City, putting a strain on our schools, on public safety and law enforcement, and local governments. Mayor Adams, you said your top priority is to keep New Yorkers safe, but under your watch, the exact opposite has happened. Instead of effectively governing our city, your policies have compounded this crisis. New York has housed migrants in the Roosevelt Hotel for nearly 2 years, not only giving them food and shelter, but also debit cards. In New York, taxpayers have paid about, as you acknowledge, $7 billion to respond to this crisis. That figure is outrageous. And now, instead of stopping the bleeding, you're going back and asking the taxpayers of New York to spend another $1 billion on this crisis. While you focused on your own personal problems, crime has skyrocketed in New York, increasing 20% since you took office in 2021. An AP poll has said that the majority of Americans agree that undocumented people who commit violent crimes should be deported, including 79% of Democrats. But what have you done? I was astounded to hear that ICE was prevented even if they knew there were gang members in the Roosevelt Hotel, from actually doing anything to get those gang members out of there. Mayor Adams, what have you done and what is your answer to the taxpayers of New York for the money that has been spent on this crisis?
You raise several things, and there's a level of inaccuracy in some of the stuff you raise. When you look at our crime numbers, I'm not sure where you got those from, but we could give you an accurate account of our crime numbers. Crime has continued to drop since I've been the mayor of the city. We have moved over 20,000 illegal guns off our street. And although we had 230,000 migrants and asylum seekers that came to our door, 189,000 were able to go on to the next step of their journey. We manage a crisis. Congress makes our immigration policies, not mayors. I manage a crisis that was dropped at my door. And I continue to do that every day. And I'm proud of what my team did coming out of COVID and managing this crisis as well. Our city has more private sector jobs in the history of the city. We received our bond rating increase and stabilized. Our city is functioning, and we're going to continue to do the job that I was elected to do.
So spending $8 million is $1 billion is a good job. Mayor Adams, what you said today has given me no confidence in your ability to continue to serve and lead our city.
But you don't live in
You
New
have
York City.
proven
You live
that
on Long
you're
Island.
unfit
You don't vote
to be
for me.
mayor, and you should resign. And I said that before you made your deal with Donald Trump.
Thank God you don't live in New York City. You live on Long Island.
But
People
the
of
problems
city-
New York City
people of
affect my
city elect-
constituents
People
who
of
work
New York
in Long
City
who
elected.
work in Manhattan, whose kids live in Manhattan, who go to the doctor in Manhattan. Everything that happens in Manhattan affects my constituents, Mayor. I yield back.
Would the gentlelady yield to me, please? I thank the gentlelady. My question, Mr. Beer. We've heard a lot about crime. So the overwhelming majority of crime in the United States is committed by undocumented individuals whose immigration status is dubious. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct at all. The overwhelming majority of crime is committed by U.S. born Americans.
So if I wanted to demonize naturally born Americans, I could cherry pick crime rates from that population and demonize them and dramatize that and use it to smear an entire subgroup in the population. In this case, the majority group. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. You could look at people with driver's licenses and say, man, they're committing a lot of crime. We should stop issuing driver's licenses to
Right.
people.
I think that's really the sham and the shame of what people are doing in terms of political exploitation of a population this country needs if we're going to grow and protect the social safety net for the future. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Ms. Green from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming before our committee today. In the past 4 years, our nation has been invaded by millions and millions of people who have crossed our border. There's also millions of what's called known gotaways. These are people that our government has no idea where they came from, who they are, what they're going to do in our country. And many of these known gotaways could be criminals. They could be part of the narco cartels. They could be terrorists. We don't know who they are, and there's millions of them here. This country has also been the victim of fentanyl. This is a dangerous chemical that comes from China, is made into pressed pills in Mexico and Canada, and illegally distributed into our country by the cartels. On average, 200 to 300 Americans die every single day from fentanyl. Not die, they're murdered. They're murdered. Americans have also been victims of all types of illegal alien crimes. One family in particular, Laken Riley's family, I know them personally, and her death was absolutely horrific. Jose Ibarra entered the United States illegally on September 8th, 2022, near El Paso, Texas, with his wife and son. He was detained by the U.S. Border Patrol, but soon released due to overcrowding at detention facilities. After his release, he was transported to New York City, arriving around September 15th, 2022. The following summer, he was arrested by New York Police Department and charged with acting in a manner to injure a child, and a driver's license violation. Before an immigration detainer could be issued, NYPD released Ibarra according to ICE. He later, after this release, moved to Athens, Georgia, where he was cited for a misdemeanor for shoplifting in 2023. This guy got arrested multiple times. He was stopped at the border, but he was continually released. Just a few months later, he brutally murdered Laken Riley. Mayor Adams, do you agree that Laken Riley would still be alive today if New York Police Department hadn't released Jose Ibarra after they arrested him?
Despicable crime. And as a former law enforcement officer, I respond to these crimes as the mayor as well. And I believe people like that should be held accountable. And I've advocated to stop this revolving door criminal justice systems like him to come out and hurt innocent people. I wish we would have had the power to prevent that from happening.
Mayor Adams, will you continue sanctuary city policies in your city?
That policy is by law. I do not make the law. I must operate within the confines of the Constitution and the law.
Mayor Adams, will you advocate to get rid of sanctuary city policies in the city of New York?
I have made it clear on a portion of the sanctuary city policies that I believe we need to alter to prevent crimes like this from taking place.
Federal law under 8 USC 1324 makes it a crime to knowingly harbor and shield illegal aliens from detection, but your cities refuse to work with ICE detainers to help them find these criminals. I'll go one at a time. Mayor Adams, will you work with ICE in New York City, yes or no?
ICE is part of our criminal justice apparatus, and I will work with my city, state, and federal agencies to keep our cities safe, no matter who they are.
Mayor Johnson, will you work with ICE to protect your city?
We do work with ICE right now, Congresswoman. When they send us information about someone they would like access to, we send them notice when and where we will release them, and they can pick them up. We've done that 1,226 times. We will keep doing it.
Will you end sanctuary city policies?
We think the policies that we have right now allow us to work with ICE and to stop crime, and we'll keep doing that.
Mayor Johnson, will you work with ICE?
Our local law enforcement, Chicago Police Department, we work with federal agents on a variety of issues: drug trafficking, sex trafficking, getting guns off the street. And we will continue to work with federal
Will you
agents. to
stop
keep us safe.
harboring illegal aliens? Will you end sanctuary city policies?
So the city of Chicago, we do not harbor criminals. We do not harbor undocumented individuals. We comply with all laws.
Mayor Wu, will you work with ICE to protect Americans, legal Americans in your city, and end sanctuary policies?
The Boston Police work with ICE and federal agencies every single day on criminal matters and hold people who are committing crimes accountable.
Chairman, if I may, I'd like to enter for the record, according to the U.S. Constitution, giving aid and comfort to the enemies of the United States is an act of treason, and those that violate that should be
Without
held
objection, so
accountable.
ordered.
Thank you.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
Thank you, Chairman. Now, Mayor Adams, are you aware that the former acting U.S. Attorney Danielle Sassoon was present at the January 31st meeting between your lawyers and federal prosecutors?
As I stated, and you, Congresswoman, you appear to want to ask the question over and over again, and so I could only
No,
give
these
you
are
the
very different
appropriate question
questions,
over and
Mayor.
over again. That this
Okay,
case
I
is
understand.
under
Mayor
Judge
Adams, are
Ho,
you not
and
answering
Joe
this
Ho
question because
will
you believe
be
you will
able to
incriminate yourself?
respond to the movement
I
of this
understand.
case. I
Mr.
in
Chairman, I
deference to
would like
him, I
to
would like
submit
have him
to
handle
the
it.
congressional record Danielle Sassoon's resignation letter from the U.S. Attorney.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you so much. In her letter, the former acting U.S. Attorney, a registered Republican, a former clerk for Antonin Scalia, was appointed by President Trump to serve as acting U.S. Attorney, was present at the January 31st meeting between Mayor Adams' attorneys and federal prosecutors. After that meeting with attorneys, the acting U.S. Attorney resigned rather than dismiss the charges against Mayor Adams. In her letter, which I have just submitted to the congressional record, Ms. Sassoon stated that during that January 31st meeting, Mayor Adams's attorneys, quote, repeatedly urged what amounted to a quid pro quo, describing it as a, quote, improper offer of immigration enforcement assistance in exchange for a dismissal of his case, end quote. The acting U.S. attorney has submitted a former acting U.S. attorney has submitted a letter. And Mayor Adams, do you know how many federal prosecutors total resigned rather than file the motion to drop the charges?
It was reported that 7.
7. Correct. Mr. Chair, I would like to submit another letter from Hagan Scotton, his resignation letter.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Scotton was an assistant U.S. attorney who also attended the January 31st meeting between your attorneys and federal prosecutors. He also resigned rather than drop the charges. In his resignation letter, he stated, and I quote, "Our laws and traditions do not allow using the prosecutorial power to influence other citizens, much less elected officials." 7 federal prosecutors, the acting U.S. attorney, the assistant U.S. attorney, all gave up their entire careers, Republicans included, then drop these charges because of what they saw transpire in that January 31st meeting. This is important not just for the city of New York, but for the people of the United States of America. Because what is being alleged is genuinely not just about what may or may not have occurred from the mayor's office and with the mayor, but what is happening at the Department of Justice. And that's what I want everyone to understand. These are not Democratic U.S. attorneys. These are Republican U.S. attorneys that have trained under Republican-appointed Supreme Court justices who have stated that there is and suggested as well, that the prosecutorial power at the Department of Justice may be influencing what is occurring. And instead of carrying that out and carrying out the erosion at the Department of Justice, they would have preferred to give up their entire career. 7 lifelong public servants involved in law enforcement, mind you. And to that, when it comes to the fact that this may or may not have anything to do with this hearing, respectfully, Mr. Chairman, this is about specifically immigration enforcement in terms of that. And this right here is the 4-alarm fire that everyone must be paying attention to. Because if it's not just in the mayor's office of New York City, what other city, what other individual, what other municipality leader can be next? For a party that talks about states' rights and municipal rights, we must defend, yes, the rule of law, including in the Department of Justice. And with that, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair recognizes Mr. LaHood from Illinois.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would thank you for allowing me the opportunity to wave on to this important committee hearing today. I want to thank the witnesses. I represent a district right outside of Chicago, the excerpts of Chicago representing Rockford, Bloomington Normal, Peoria. And I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having this hearing. It's past time that individuals like the mayors we have before us come before us and explain to the American people why you continue to fail to enforce the laws of our country and allow illegal immigrants to flood into our communities. And it's clear to me that sanctuary city policies have significantly harmed our once great cities, which is very, very unfortunate. During my time as an elected official, I have strongly condemned the policy around sanctuary cities and the impact it's had on the state of Illinois. And I believe every sensible resident in Illinois knows these policies have further harmed the economy in Illinois, increased crime throughout our state, and endangered hardworking, law-abiding Illinois citizens. I want to turn my attention to you, Mayor Brandon Johnson of Chicago.
As I've watched you over the last 2 years that you've been mayor, I've been amazed at how tone deaf you have been and how oblivious you've been to the decline of Chicago. And I say that looking objectively at a number of things. Out of control crime in Chicago, people scared throughout neighborhoods on the west side, south side, north side. Morale has never been lower with law enforcement and CPD. Record number of police officers leaving the force. We have been hemorrhaging people out of the city of Chicago to the suburbs and elsewhere where they feel safe. Record number of businesses fleeing the city of Chicago. You couple that with record deficits, $2 billion deficit, the $2 billion deficit line of credit that you just had to take out this week. But you've spent $300 million of taxpayer money on illegal immigrants. And when I think about all of those things and I look at the strategy you continue to take, I mean, you're putting the interest of illegal immigrants above the interest of taxpayers in Chicago. But you continue to go down this path. And for the life of me, I can't understand it. So, Mayor, tell me why you continue to put the interest of illegal immigrants above taxpayers in Chicago.
Thank you for your representation. Violent crime is down in Chicago.
Well, let me reclaim my time. So I have a statistic here. Last year, Chicago had 573 murders.
Down.
Okay, but I want to compare that to the city of New York that is almost 2/3 the size of Chicago, 337 murders. So you had 573 murders in the city of Chicago, and you're 1/3 the size.
That's the lowest amount in 5 years under my leadership.
Okay, and you look at the level of violent criminals, sexual offenses, and drug dealers.
All violent crime is down in Chicago. In fact, just this year alone, Congressman, respectfully, there's a 20% decrease in violent crime in the city of Chicago.
I don't agree with your statistics.
Well, it's not a matter of whether or not you agree with it. It's a
Let me
matter of whether
reclaim
it's a
my
fact.
time because I thought you might do this. And when I hear your answer, no one in this room should be surprised that your approval rating is 6.6%. Now, that's not just me saying this. Newsweek article, the least popular politician in America is Brandon Johnson. So recent poll, M3 Strategies conducted this February 20th to 21st, showed that Mayor Johnson has a 6.6% approval rating, the worst showing of any political figure in the country's history. So I know you're talking about crime is down and things are great and, you know, the city's flush with money. None of that is backed up by the people in the city of Chicago. And so I'm wondering why you continue to go down this path of failed policies, destruction to the city of Chicago, people fleeing, law enforcement at an all-time low. And I'm wondering if you have any remorse for that here today and can tell us why you continue to double down on these failed policies.
We've invested $1.25 billion for housing and economic development, particularly for Black Chicago. It's the largest investment in the history of Chicago. 45% increase in youth employment, particularly for Black and brown children. I will not apologize for my investments in the people of Chicago. We have one of the most diverse economies, the top universities. As violence continues to go down and investments continue to go up, that is what's most important. We've opened up 3 mental health clinics, the first mayor since the first Black mayor in the history of Chicago.
I'm going to reclaim my
invest in
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to reclaim my time.
in public health, and I will continue to make those investments.
Your approval rating speaks volumes.
Well, the people approve of my investments, and I will continue to make those investments.
You're
Thank you
going the
very
wrong
much.
direction. You need to reverse your policies on sanctuary cities. That's what the election results were last year. Crime and
Is down in
immigration
Chicago.
were the #1 issue in the election from Republicans, Democrats,
Chairman, the
Independents.
gentleman's
We
time
could
has
use your
expired.
help to actually help us continue to invest in these programs that continue to drive violence down in the city of Chicago. And I'm willing to work with you, and I'm glad I had a chance to finally meet you for the first time.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair recognizes Mr. Davis from Illinois.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I also want to thank you and Ranking Member Connolly.
If the gentleman could speak into the microphone so we can hear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I also want to thank you and Ranking Member Connolly for letting me participate in today's hearing. I also want to thank all of the witnesses. I served some time as a city councilman, so I know what it looks like to be mayor and what happens. Thank you for your service. As a proud Chicagoan, I stand in support of our city's locally elected leaders, namely Mayor Brandon Johnson, who could be back home serving the residents of Chicago, but instead is here before us today, preserving and protecting the sovereignty of the city of Chicago as a welcoming and humane city. At a time when immigrants are being blanketly labeled as criminals and targeted haphazardly to fuel the Trump-Musk administration's PR-orientated deportation stunt. I'm proud that since the enactment of the Illinois Trust Act in 2017, the state of Illinois, Cook County, and the city of Chicago have maintained an ongoing commitment to welcoming those in need, including those that have endured persecution abroad and pressed their way across borders, looking and longing for a better life for themselves and their families. I think we all agree that immigration has long played an integral role in the development of American society, culture, and its economy. In recognition of such, the city of Chicago is holding true to its values. As Mayor Johnson has stated on several occasions, that Chicago, and I quote, will remain a welcoming city, end of quotation, despite recent and repeated threats and attempts of coercion from the current administration to do otherwise. Likewise, H.R. 32, the supposed No Bailout for Sanctuary Cities Act that undergirds today's hearing, is drafted in the same threatening, intrusive, and non-constructive manner, as the measure unfairly calls for welcoming jurisdictions to be stripped of federal funding that we just heard often goes towards supporting critical public safety initiatives and local programming needs.
Okay, I'm sorry, I've got to cut this live to prepare for the Cassandra Hobson Jordan and Mr. Harrison live interview. It will be on both channels. There will be no questions. I'm going to post a video. Whoever wants to live stream it may do so. You can say what you want on your own channels about the live stream, but it will not be acceptable on this channel or on Conscious channel. You're very welcome, Moxie, and thank you so much for being here. I hope to see you 5 Central Time, 6 Eastern Time, and 4, is it 4 Wyoming? Your time, Mountain Time. Oh. Okay. We're going to need mods on both channels. Okay. And I'll be able to see everybody. 3 p.m. Thank you very much, Wyoming. 3 p.m. Pacific time. Thank you, Big Mike. 4 p.m. Arizona time. So mods on both channels. You can choose which channel you want to be on. Take your pick. We'll need on both channels. Anybody can live stream the video. You will not be copyrighted struck. You can have all your opinions you want on your own channels, but they will not be welcome on these 2 channels. When somebody comes into the comments, they will be blocked. You know, the comment will be taken down. We are just going to listen to Miss Jordan and Mr. Harrison. Sorry. But that's it. We're going to go get ready, and we will see you then. have a great day. And it's a busy day today. Thanks a lot, everybody. Okay. I gotta post up the outro. Wasn't prepared for that.